Welcome to the new Crozet Library. This is your library. We're so happy to have you here. My name is Wendy. I'm the branch manager here. I'm very fortunate to be branch manager here. Our library director, John Halliday, is here. He's in the back room. He's in charge of all 8 branches of the Jefferson Madison Regional Library. I just want to thank the Friends of the Library who make these programs possible. All of our programs are supported by our library book sale. That pays for all of our programs, our children's programs, our teens programs, our adult programs. Not a penny comes from taxes. It comes from the book sale. So please support the book sale. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to introduce the director of the film, who is a neighbor, lives nearby, is a library patron, and now also a friend. So, Mr. Eduardo Montes-Bradley.
I am the foreword. Then comes the movie. And there's not much I can say about the film except that it's a film that is very dear to me. And I'm very grateful that the protagonist, which is Julian, actually the protagonist is history. Julian is the one who tells it very well. Is here with us, and I'm very grateful for him coming and for Pam coming here too. And I'll let you see the film, and he's going to answer some questions afterwards. And I need a picture for my mom.
What happened is after the Civil War ended and the slaves were emancipated, these people were left with no money, no education, no property, no sense of being real citizens because they weren't allowed to register and vote. They reverted to the protection of their former masters. They took up the same jobs with them that they had when he owned them. And the difference is, he now owned them economically. He didn't own them physically, but...
Oh, now you're frozen in the wall. Maybe if we should have better... Okay, that's a better image.
Okay, I don't know what we're going to do now. Isn't this a great movie? Didn't it have a great movie maker? I don't know how many of you came here to see the one previously that he did by America's former poet laureate, who's also at the University of Virginia. Was that 2 weeks ago?
That was last Thursday.
Last Thursday? Any of you come to see that? We ought to see it. It's better than this one. And about a notable figure in this community. And good to see all of you. I don't know if you have any questions or anything. If you have any questions about the film, ask the filmmaker. If you have any questions about me, ask me. And if there are none, yes, sir.
What do you think, Mr. Bond, are the big challenges that lie ahead to complete this journey that you've taken and have advanced so far?
Well, there are different kinds of challenges. Some are specifics. One thing that bothers me particularly is that for many, many years we've had laws against housing discrimination in the United States. And those laws are barely enforced on any level, the state, the county, the federal level. And as a consequence, you still find black people living over here and white people living over here. And as long as that's true, it means some of the people are not going to have good schools, some of them are not going to have good housing, some of them are not going to have good lives. because of this fact of segregated schools, segregated neighborhoods. And until we can address this issue, some of the divisions in our society are just going to continue on and on and on. Now, in addition to specifics like this, there are generalities that we need to address. And if you look at the division in our politics, with some people over here and some people over here, some people idiots, some people regular people, and unless we can address that, we're going to continue down this path. Now, I'm a lifelong optimist. I've always believed the best thing's going to happen, the best things are going to turn out the best way. But unless we really put our shoulders to the wheel and eliminate these divisiveness among us, then we're just going to be stuck and continue on the same way. So I hope we do that. Another? Yes, ma'am.
Why did your family move to Georgia when they knew that it was more segregated and harder for?
Well, my father got offered a job at Fort Valley State College for Negroes in Fort Valley, Georgia. And he got a job offer to be president. Of course, he's a relatively young man, and to be president of a college, that was a big deal. It's a big deal now. And so he took this job and stayed there for 5 years, and then got a job at his alma mater, which is Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and so we moved there. But I think we went to Georgia because he was chasing a job and got a job that he wanted to have, but a time came when he didn't want to have that job anymore. What really happened is that Gene Talmadge, not Herman Talmadge. Herman Talmadge was the son. Gene Talmadge was the father. Gene Talmadge was governor of Georgia, and he made a habit of visiting all of the colleges in Georgia every year. And he came to Fort Valley State College, and my father had pictures taken of him having dinner with black people. And he gave those pictures to Governor Talmadge and said, I want you to see these before I send them to the Atlanta Constitution. And the next year, my father left Fort Valley State College. So we had to leave. Another question? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first off, thank you for all that you've done, your whole life that you've been an activist. And second, I loved what you said about just being and not putting yourself in a box of religious belief or non-belief. And I'm curious, now that you're retired, what's pulling you, what's tugging at your heart?
Well, I've always thought that each of us needs to be involved in public life. In some way or another, each of us needs to be doing something to make our community better, our city better, our county better, our state better, our country better. All of us needs to be doing something. And unless we can find something like that to do, we're not really doing anything at all. We're not really whole people. And I always want to be involved in something and try to look for something I can be involved in. I want to help make my world more perfect. But you know, it's interesting, since I said that in this documentary about my religious beliefs or lack of them, somebody told Eduardo that he better be careful about who he interviews, because the people just are not good people. Yes, ma'am.
What gives you hope?
I really don't know, because as I said a moment ago, I'm a big optimist. I always think the best thing is going to come so. And I don't know why that's so in me. Because against all evidence, you know, you ought to be believing the opposite way. Just look around you and say, how can that be true? But I do believe that the best thing can happen. I think it's partially because when I was a younger man and involved in the early days of the civil rights movement, you know, we thought if we sit in at these lunch counters, they'll become integrated. We'll be able to eat there. And we sat in at these lunch counters and they became integrated and we were able to eat there. Say, oh, this is great. Now if we go on these freedom rides and sit in the front of these buses, even though we get beaten up and our bus gets attacked and blown up, we'll be able to sit anywhere on the bus we want to. And so it came to pass. So early in life I had these lessons that taught me if you work hard, if you do this, if you do that, you'll succeed. And it turned out to be true. So if it turned out to be true then, it'll turn out to be true now. Yes, sir.
Do you see any young people today that could be our leaders tomorrow? Some people that we ought to watch out.
I see them all the time, you know, until for 11 years I was chairman of the board of the NAACP, and the image of the NAACP in all of your minds, I know this to be true, is old men with white hair. But the truth is, that the NAACP has the largest collection of young people of any civil rights organization that has both young and old people in its membership. And I go to an annual convention of the NAACP every year, and every year I see these high school and college students from all over the country engaged in doing the work of the NAACP. And I think, gee, you know, things are not so bad because we've got this group of people and they'll be taken over pretty soon. This past summer, my wife and I drove down to Tallahassee on the day the Dreamers were breaking their sit-in at the state capitol in Tallahassee, as you'll remember, and had agreed to give it up because they thought they'd come as far as they could come with that. And these are all young people. These are all college-age young people. And they came out of nowhere, seemingly, and took over the state capital of Florida. And as long as we have young people in the country who are doing those kinds of things, I think we're in good hands and good things are going to happen. Yes?
A couple of things. When I substitute taught at Monticello High School, it was a third Hispanic, a third white, and a third black, and there was no contention, and that was really good. And then in 2008, we finally elected a black president, and we were, I mean, it was just amazing. And yet, there's been so much in the Congress that we're not getting much done. And so, where are we on this? And I have a picture of you here in Birmingham. Now, I went on his civil rights tour. This is for you.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Thank
and
you.
this elderly black man stopped him and he said, "This is Julian Bond." And I'm thinking today, young people aren't going to recognize you. So who is
Thank you for this.
You're very welcome.
Good to see you. The trip she's taking about, for the last 6 years, I've led this trip through the American South, taking people to places where the civil rights movement occurred and meeting people who made it. Who here, don't answer this question, who here knows the name Robert Gratz? Who knows who Robert Gratz is? Robert Gratz was the white pastor of the Black Lutheran Church in Montgomery, Alabama, when Rosa Parks was arrested. And Dr. Gratz was out of town when she was arrested. He came back into town and his congregation is in an uproar. Somebody's been arrested. There's going to be a boycott. What's going on? He calls his congregation and they either cannot or will not tell him what happened. And finally he calls this woman who used to use his church for NAACP meetings. She said, "Somebody's been arrested." She said, "That's right, Pastor Gratz. There's going to be a bus boycott." She says, "That's right, Pastor Gratz." He said, "Who was it?" She said, "It was me, Pastor Gratz. I was the one." Now, Pastor Gratz is in his 80s, and we're going to take our group to Montgomery, and they'll meet Pastor Gratz, and he'll talk to us about his experiences working with Dr. King and leading the Montgomery bus boycott. We're going to start in Atlanta. We go from Atlanta to Birmingham, and in Birmingham, we're going to hear two people. One is a woman named Camille Morgan. She's the widow of a lawyer named Charles Morgan. And Charles Morgan was scheduled to give a speech the day after the church bombing. And because of the church bombing, he changed the nature of his speech. He called it, "Who Did It?" And he said to the assembled young all-white men's businessmen association, "Every time you use the N-word, you did it. Every time you elected one of these idiot politicians, you did it. Every time this happened, you did it." He said, "Birmingham's not a dying city, it's dead." This speech is not printed in the Birmingham News. But after a week has passed, it's printed in the New York Times and printed in the overseas newspaper whose name I can't remember right now.
Herald Tribune.
Yeah, the Herald Tribune. And then it's printed in the New York Times, and then it's printed in the Birmingham News. And before it was printed in the Birmingham News, he got all these congratulatory letters from people, mostly white Southerners who had left the South because they couldn't take living there, congratulating him for doing one they were not brave enough to do. But then it's printed in the Birmingham newspapers, and the letters changed. They became ugly, ugly letters, cursing letters, vicious, dirty letters. And his wife saved these letters and told me that she would come to read them to me. Now, she has the most Southern accent of anybody I've ever met. My wife's name is Pam. And in this woman's name, this is a 4-syllable word. And she reads a good letter, and she reads a bad letter, and a good letter, and a bad letter. And when it's through, everybody's crying because these letters are so powerful. So we're going to hear from her. We're also going to hear from a man named Doug Jones. Doug Jones was the U.S. attorney in Birmingham who prosecuted the last of the bombers of the 16th Street Baptist Church. And luckily, he brings with him the FBI wiretaps that helped to put these men away. And in one of the wiretaps, one of these bombers is talking to his girlfriend. And her name is, she says to him, "Where were you on this night?" She said, "You were with Waylene, aren't you?" What a southern name that is. "You're with Waylene." And he says, "No, I was making the bomb." But we got him there. So then we're going to Montgomery. We'll spend 3 or 4 days in Montgomery, take a side trip to Selma, cross over the bridge. We'll go to places in Montgomery where the civil rights movement was made. We'll meet people who helped make that movement. And then on the last day, we're going to Monroeville, Alabama. Now, who is the most famous person who lives in Monroeville, Alabama? She wrote a book. It's about birds. Harper Lee, that's right, Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird. And every year, about this time in May, the townspeople of Monroeville enact the courtroom scene from To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're going to go to that, and then we'll come home. So if you want to go on this trip, we only have about 1 or 2 seats on the bus left. But come see me and we'll fix you up. So good to see you.
Do you think people are less inclined to organize for social justice these days? And if so, why?
I'm not sure if they are less or more inclined. I'd hate to think they were less inclined. I teach at American University now instead of University of Virginia, and I meet young people and they're organizing like crazy. You can't stop them from organizing. Even if you want to stop them from organizing, you can't stop them. So I would gather they're at least as eager to organize as they were in years past. And that again is one of the things that makes me hopeful. And I think we have time for 1 or 2 more. Yes, miss.
I was just wondering, speaking of teaching at college, I went to UVA and I actually took your class when I was a second year.
I remember you.
With about 100 other people in Wilson Hall. But I'm a teacher in Albemarle County now, and I was just wondering, when did you know that, or when did you decide that you wanted to become a professor, that you wanted to teach?
I don't know. My father was an academic, became a university president, but before then he had worked his way up. He was a PhD, worked his way up the academic ladder. And my mother was a librarian, but had been a school teacher before then. So I think it's sort of in my family, in my blood. And I had come to UVA. I can't remember the occasion, but I came to UVA for something or the other. I think to make a speech. And I had a friend who was teaching there, a woman named Pat Sullivan. And she said, "Would you like to teach at the University of Virginia?" I said, "Wow, I'd love that." And so she fixed it up with somebody, and there it was. Happened like that. And I loved it. I enjoyed it. It was tough at first because, just a second. It was tough at first because it's something I hadn't done before, and everybody else in my department had gone to school to learn how to do this, except me. But I learned how to do it, and I liked it more and more, and I enjoyed it. And you know, there must be other teachers in here too. When you are teaching a class, like a group like this, and you look out and you see that one face where the light is going on, and you say, "I did that." Wow. There's a feeling you can't get any other place. I got that feeling every now and then, so it was enjoyable. Yes, miss?
What can kids do to make the world important?
What?
What can kids do to make the world important?
To make what?
World important.
What can kids do to help make the world better, more important?
You can study hard, but don't study wrong. You can make sure that you pay attention to what's going on around you. You can read the newspaper, you can listen to the radio, you can look at TV at the news, find out what people are saying about what's happening, not just where you live, but all over the world. And say to yourself, "Ooh, I don't like that. I don't like the way those people are doing. I'm going to do something to straighten them out." And I don't mean beat them up or hit them or anything like that. I'm going to find some way to make them behave better. Are you going to do that? Okay, thank you. Thank you all very, very much.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone, and especially the library, which it's not on, is it? Oh, do I speak this good? Oh, hello. Especially the library, which I saw being built, and I used to go to my house and then come outside and see the building coming up, and I go like, that's a good place to show movies. Wasn't it? And since my movies have so much to do with literature most of the time, and with social issues, and with community life, I thought that this would be probably the ideal place to do it. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you all for coming. There are more cookies and refreshments out there. I hope there are also listings of more adult programs that we have on the wall under the flat screen out there. We're going to have some nice programs coming up for you, for teens, for children, and just come and visit us. It's your library.
Thank you. Thank you.